The same soldiers who grabbed power less than 1 year ago, upset it seems that they weren't consulted before a cabinet reshuffle. They insist they're sticking to plans to take the country to elections next year. Well, for more, let's go to Brussels. Delina Goxo is Associate Fellow at Egmont, Belgium's Royal Institute for International Relations. You're the author of the paper Sahel Competing Visions and Implementation Checkpoints. Thanks for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you for having me.
A coup within a coup. That's the way you describe it.
This is the way that's been described by a number of analysts that are following what is currently taking place in Mali. This happens because not even a year after the military coup of August 2020, Colonel Assimi Goïta, who is also vice president in Mali currently, announced the demise of President Bandao and Prime Minister Mokhtar Ouane of what we now can call the first transition government after forcefully conducting them to the Kati military base. This is a bit of a sad photocopy to what happened in August 2020, when former President Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta, IBK, was also brought to Kati to be dismissed. So yes, it is a coup within a coup, effectively.
A coup within a coup, and the timing is awful for Mali, which is having a world of trouble dealing with insurgents, dealing with tensions between herders and farmers, and all of this taking place when the military had promised it was going to hand back the reins. I know there's an ECOWAS delegation that was expected, led by Nigeria's former president, Goodluck Jonathan, this Tuesday. What can be done at this point?
So this is effectively something that, once again, a colleague has defined a court intrigue. The country is plunging deeper into crisis, both in the north and the center of Mali. Civilians are attacked every day, and French journalists like Olivier Dubois are still detained by the Malian faction of Al-Qaeda. So yes, effectively, the situation is quite dramatic. The situation in Bamako at the moment is relatively calm. The fact that both the president and prime minister were brought to Kati speaks volumes and is particularly dramatic. I suppose mentioning what happened with the coup last year would make sense at this point. So when the coup was announced at the time, there was a number of fears on the part of observers and partner countries, including the French. And the main two fears were that the transition government would mostly be made up of military individuals, and that the transition would be of about 3 years, which is a very long time for a transition. The fears were at the time assuaged in September, also thanks to, as you rightfully mentioned, the negotiations of Goodluck Jonathan. The transition government was split into both civilian and military in a way that was almost seamless. And the negotiations that led to a transition charter were supposed to last for about 18 months. But as we can clearly see now, there was much more going on internally. And so there was what we can call a proper split within the Malian government and this first transition government.
Delina, we have seen unfortunately, a cycle whereby we're always on the cusp of reform and better governance. Back in 2012, there was a coup in Mali and things unraveled fast. The French had to step in to stop jihadists from marching on the capital. We've seen the situation downgraded again. This is the third time there's been a coup, right, in less than a decade in Mali. And so the question then becomes, the money that's thrown at Mali by France, by the European Union, at this point in time, is there a different way of helping the country?
I mean, the answer would be yes. Some analysts, some observers advocate for proper detachment from the situation in the region, which I find slightly problematic. What happened?
Yeah, because then you let the jihadists come in.
Yeah, of course, there is this argument, which is a particularly forceful one. At the same time, the way we are intervening as European and also French forces doesn't seem to be bearing results. One argument that I would make, and is something that I tend to think about quite a lot is a way of conducting interventions that tends to be, of course, more conditional. So aid should be made more conditional on the behavior of governments. The problem with these governments, however, is that they do not seem to be credible interlocutors, as we have seen once again. So what happens in Brussels and Paris is that they ask, leaders in Brussels and Paris ask, well, then who should be the interlocutors? Because we cannot intervene in these countries, but at the same time, we don't want to spend our resources and also end up fueling governments which are even more problematic. I suppose the way we spend this money, the way we intervene politically should be considered not just technical, but also political, and at the same time be made conditional on reform on the part of these governments and be properly evaluated, which is something that is currently missing. And again, this is not a technical change. This is very much a political change. Being aware of the way we're intervening and knowing how to properly evaluate our interventions would be a very positive step, at least on the part of the EU. Then the French, of course, have much more political leverage in the region. So
let's talk about the French now, because we heard that strong statement from Emmanuel Macron at the outset of our conversation. France, which in 2013 was hailed, the then President François Hollande was a hero for helping stop the jihadists. There were crowds in the streets to cheer him on. Anti-French sentiment grew as things got bogged down. Emmanuel Macron, who just this week is trying to show a different face of France and Africa by going on that trip to Rwanda later this week, he's trying to show a different side of France, or to move on from the old stereotypes of the former colonial power that intervenes all the time. But what can the French do except get drawn back in?
Yeah, France has been trying strategically in terms of communication to present another version of itself for the region. But then something that happened, it was just 2019 where the French intervened in the north of Chad to support the Chadian leader against rebels. And this is very relevant. These were not jihadist groups, these were rebels. So this form of ingerence in local affairs is particularly problematic, especially when the support is given to leaders which may be conducting coup after coup after coup. So it is a form of support that is very much problematic, I suppose. This is a way to put it. I think there is very little that external actors can do at this point. Of course, France, something that just happened, Macron announced an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. This is something that is, I suppose, a very positive move. At the same time, having a very strong reaction against the coup within the coup is also positive. But again, it shows that France behaves differently with respect to who leads what coup. So in Chad, the reaction to 30 years of Déby's rule were quite silent, if not very much supportive of Déby. In Bamako, they have chosen to behave differently. Is a bit schizophrenic, this type of behavior on the part of Paris.
Telini Gokso of Belgium's Royal Institute for International Relations, Egmont, thank you for joining us from Brussels.
Thank you very much.